here's my setup. Floor, or ceiling to floor, ceiling to floor, ceiling to floor, and then couch, chairs, stuff behind over here, and then my setup. And then so everything on the laptop is exactly what is shown on the TV. So you can see if I move the mouse like this, you can see that, and then it's like the exact same image that has all the slides on the side, and then the picture of me, and then all the slides and the picture of me. And then the phone and remote is to put behind my iPad so that it stands upright. Okay. So setting this up really quickly. Moving that back. Here we go. Okay, so all of my family, starting with my great-grandmother and back, is from Spain. So much tradition and just culture and everything that I have heard about, but I never really grew up knowing about and understanding. And so the reason why I chose this cryptid is because it is from really, really nearby to my great-grandmother's hometown, which I have had the chance to visit, and I was excited to learn about things that she might have grew up hearing about and kind of learning about. So it's really ties into family and things, so I'm really excited to talk about it. So in 1674, a man named Francisco de la Verga, he went swimming with some of his friends, and he reportedly was a very good swimmer. But he got pulled under by the current in this estuary of Bilbao, and his friends had assumed that he had drowned. So he was last seen swimming into and towards the ocean. 5 years later, in 1679, these fishermen had caught this thing in their nets that kind of looked like a human. They didn't know what it was, but it was able to make itself and get free. But they lured it in with bread, and it was this human fish-looking guy. So the description of what it looked like, it was a man with very fair skin, and he had red hair, but there were scales on his front and on his back, and then there were gills or guts around his neck. And it was reported that he had looked like he had been in the water for a very long time. So they captured him on their boat and then brought him in, and they took him to an exorcist in Spain. And throughout this process, he never really said anything until he muttered this one word, lierganes. And this one man, he was like, oh, that's really close to my hometown. We should take him to lierganes. And the priest thought that was a good idea, so they did. And they got to lierganes, and he immediately started walking towards his family home. And this is where his mother recognized him. She was like, yes, this is my son. And she brought him in, and he was there for 9 years. And while he was there, he exhibited some odd behavior. He didn't really speak much. He didn't eat very much. He ate like once a week or once every 2 weeks. And he eventually, 9 years later, went back to the ocean and swam away. But one thing that this really stood out to me was just how loving this mother was, and just unconditional and accepting. And she just brought him in and brought him home, no questions asked. She was like, yes, this is my son. I don't care if he looks like a fish. He's coming home with me. So that really resonated with me, because when I went to Spain, when I was a kid, I kind of had the same experience with family that I had never met. My mom had only ever met once, and they literally brought us in like they had known us forever. They were so kind, so welcoming, and had just loved on us and took care of us, which kind of made me wonder and think if this story has any impact on the Spanish culture as a whole, on bringing family together, bringing family in, and just showing this amazing love that they have. One thing that made this story really cool and interesting to me was this one scholar named Benito Fiojo, and he was known for disproving legends, myths, things of that sort. But he had actually said that with all the facts and with all of the kind of information that was coming about with this story. He actually said that this story was true, which is crazy. But later, this man named Gregorio Marañón had stated that it wasn't necessarily true that he turned into a fish, and he might have actually had this condition where he kind of had this weird dry skin, and he didn't really speak much and ate weird and things of that sort. But that doesn't really explain the 5-year missing gap of time, so not too sure about that one. But one thing that stood out to me, honestly, is kind of the impact that this story had on the country of Spain as a whole, but specifically this town. They built him a statue, which is really cool. Not a lot of people can say that they have had a statue named after them, but it really just had just an impact on their culture and society. And then kind of the impact in culture that I think, or impact on culture that it might have had on society nowadays is one being The Creature of the Black Lagoon. This is kind of a song and short film that was made after him. He slightly resembles this fishman of lierganes, with kind of the human body and shape, but the fish scales and things. And then another set of characters that I think could have been resembled after this fishman of lierganes is the characters from Pirates of the Caribbean. They kind of have this fishy-like look, but they still have the human stature, but they have the scales and the gills and the barnacles and all that kind of stuff. So very similar connection, and it makes me wonder if it had an impact. But 3 major takeaways that I really kind of understood from this story. The first one is the power of storytelling. This story has been told for over 300 years and has had such an impact on the society, specifically of lierganes, of course, but on Spain and honestly on like culture just in general. So I think that has been really cool. The other thing is accepting diversity and differences. That is not a very big thing back then, to accept people really for who they are. You kind of had to fit a mold. And this kind of broke that mold, and it just really showed, first of all, family, and their family, who cares what they look like, but the other thing is just people in general. He acted a little bit weird, but they still accepted him. And then the third takeaway that I kind of got from this is like the line between fact and fiction. So he, of course, probably was, this man that went missing while he was swimming. Now the fiction was most likely that he actually, had gills and scales and things and turned into a fish. But it's really interesting that, it kind of all blends together, and you kind of believe it all as one or the other in a way, or, some believe it as both and mixed and things like that. But just kind of the impact that it has had, and, lets people think for themselves, and it's just kind of a unique story in that sense. But honestly, just imagine being this mother, your son being gone or presumed dead for 5 years, and then here he is, he comes home, and you just love him, you bring him in. I think not a lot of people would do that, and so it's a really cool story that shares the testament of family and love and just acceptance, and so it's very unique in that way. Thank you.